Congressman Jason Chaffetz telling the Washington Post, quote, "Even before we get to day one, we've got 2 years worth of material already lined up." Joining us now, Linda Tran, former communications director for Governor Tim Kaine, Democratic strategist and founder of 270 Strategies, and Scott Jennings, former special assistant to President George W. Bush and former Ohio State Director for the Romney campaign. Welcome to both of you. Linda, there are only about 30% of Americans who consider Hillary Clinton honest and trustworthy. Has she brought some of these potential investigative problems on herself?
Well, I think what's true is that there's probably nobody who's been investigated more than Hillary Clinton will be by the time she takes office, assuming that the polls bear out on Election Day and she enters the Oval Office. So I think that, people's perceptions are pretty baked in about her at this point, and I don't think this is actually going to have a great deal of impact on the race today.
But, Scott, if you look at the polls, the American people don't have a very high regard for Congress. They want the parties to work together to get things done. Is launching investigations of a potential Clinton administration right out of the box, is that the best use of congressional resources?
Well, I think no matter who wins this election, you're going to see a streak of legislative independence. Both candidates have historically bad image ratings and, as you said, bad numbers on honest and trustworthiness. They're going to enter office with very little capital, and so I think we'll see a streak of legislative independence, and that includes oversight. And look, what happened at the State Department is worthy of investigation, not just because of what happened, but what could happen if comparable or similar behavior were to take place in a Clinton White House. So I think Jason Chaffetz is right to look at investigations, not just to look into the past, but to protect us from what could happen in the future.
Linda, we were talking actually in our studios before the hour began about the fact that, the whole Clinton email, the private server, all of that came to light as a result of the House Benghazi investigation. None of that had been publicly known before. Is there some value to be served by looking deeper into what's been going on?
Look, I think the actual problem is that the message that Jason Chaffetz and other House Republicans are sending right now is just really out of step with where Americans are at. I think regardless of which side of the aisle you're on, you can agree that what has characterized this cycle is a general American frustration with the partisan gridlock that is in Washington. And when you have somebody like Jason Chaffetz saying from the get-go, before a Hillary Clinton administration ever even begins, he's going to bog it down with investigations and spend taxpayer dollars on a witch hunt, I think that that's just not what voters care about. It's not what Americans care about right now. But
I want to put up for viewers the ratings right now, the numbers for both candidates in North Carolina. I think we had them transposed earlier. But in North Carolina, very tight race. Hillary Clinton at 45%, 45.8%. Donald Trump, 43.8%. Gary Johnson at 5%. You say that people are, tired of partisan gridlock, Linda, but isn't it the case that much of what is fueling the Trump campaign is that he is a total outsider, somebody who's never held political office before, and he's promising to go into Washington and drain the swamp? Scott, I guess I should let you answer that.
Well, I think that is his core message, and it's really what's keeping Hillary Clinton from closing the deal. I think the polling shows Hillary with some kind of a lead, although the national polls are a little all over the place right now. But the reality is what is keeping Hillary from closing the deal is what we've seen in these emails and all these leaked documents. People see the interplay between the State Department and the foundation and the donors and everything that was going on inside of that operation, and they are fearful of that kind of activity taking place inside of a White House. And so that's why Chaffetz is speaking up, and I think it's relevant to speak up now, given that she's quite possibly going to be the commander-in-chief. And so people need to know what we have to look forward to out of a Clinton administration, and they're going to have to answer for some things that have come out in these documents.
Linda, Democrats are licking their chops at regaining the Senate because so many Democratic seats Republican seats are being defended this time around. Democrats feel like they can win the Senate. But 2 years from now, the shoe is on the other foot. Democrats are going to be defending a whole lot of seats. Does your party need to tread carefully in the next 2 years?
Well, look, I think two things are true. One is that Donald Trump is clearly serving as a bit of a downward drag on candidates up and down the ticket, down the ticket, as it pertains to the Senate and also the House. And what we know is that on an off year, a non-presidential year, it is always a much more white, much more conservative, much more male electorate. So it's always going to be a challenge. And we see these kind of roller coaster results between presidential and off-year elections as a result of that changing electorate.
All right. We're going to see what happens. happens. Obviously, it's going to be a fascinating 12 days ahead. Linda Tran, Scott Jennings, thank you.
Thank you.
Iraqi forces closing in on the ISIS stronghold